Welcome back to Area DMG. I am your host, Phil Wesley, the Mile High Mouth, and today we are going to talk about the 10 games that should be on the Nintendo 3DS Virtual Console from the Game Boy Color library. You see, the Game Boy Color, despite having kind of a short-lived time, was phenomenally successful. There were a ton of fantastic games for it, and a bunch of those have already come out on Virtual Console, even some that we didn't think would be possible. I mean, just this last year we've had Super Nintendo games show up on the new 3DS and new 3DS XL, and we had Pokemon games like Yellow, Blue, Red show up on the Virtual Console as well. Some really obscure games like Extreme Sports or Shantae have shown up on Virtual Console. We got a ton of Harvest Moon games, and even weird stuff like Lufia, The Legend Returns. But there's a bunch of games that haven't gotten to be on Virtual Console due to either licensing problems or just general stubbornness on the part of developers. Now, some of these games, well, what we did for this video is we arranged those from like 10 down to 1 of our most wanted games on the Game Boy Color Virtual Console on the Nintendo 3DS. Now, we're actually going to not include the obvious ones. For example, Pokemon Pinball is not on Virtual Console in the United States. This list only has to do with the United States. Pokemon Pinball is not there yet. It should be. No excuse, Nintendo. Gold, Silver, and Crystal are not, but who knows, maybe in the future they will be. Other honorable mentions would be Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Color, which is actually a port of Donkey Kong Country, which has a level that is not in the Super Nintendo game. A couple other ones I want to mention as honorable mentions before we go along are Spy vs. Spy. This is excellent. Conker's Pocket Tales, weird game. Classic Bubble Bobble, another awesome game that should be on Virtual Console. Montezuma's Return, put out by Take-Two. Fantastic port of the Commodore 64 game that I really liked. Q*bert, which, oh goodness, I don't know why this wasn't re-released. It's pretty good. Other ones that will probably not end up on Virtual Console anytime soon, but darn well should. Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel, or Metal Gear Solid Game Boy Color, is not within this 10. You'd think that would be like the number 1 or something, right? Well, it's not on Virtual Console in any of these, and Konami is terrible. Other stuff I don't expect to ever make it to Virtual Console, but I'd love to see it, would be the Sabrina and Wendy games that came out. These were put out by Way Forward Technology. They're all platformers, and they all have some interesting gameplay conceits to them. Spooked and Zapped have like a find and hunt through these levels. You have multiple characters you play as. Wendy's Every Which Way has like gravity defying puzzles. We see a lot of stuff that uses the same kind of gimmick, and it also has Cotton style shooting levels. We'll probably never see those on Virtual Console. The same with the fantastic Duke Nukem from Taurus Games. I mean, we give them a lot of grief for Yoda Stories, but their Duke Nukem game was fantastic. It was just a really good game. However, it's not in this list. Now, this list is by no way definitive, and the order switches from day to day. This is how the order looks to me right now. So, number 10 of the games that should be on the Game Boy Color Virtual Console but are not. Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle 3. Now, there's 4 Crazy Castle games, and the 4th one has Woody Woodpecker in it, but these games are similar to Toki Tori, And they are actually really, really good. The first two were fantastic on the Game Boy. And it's really a shame that we never got these on Virtual Console. They're not well known, but they're a lot of fun. They're great puzzle games. You can't jump. The basic idea in these is that you go and you collect keys and open doors and avoid the enemies by killing them off with like anvils or punching gloves or whatnot. Gets tough, and it's pretty good. The next one on our list is R-Type DX. R-Type DX is a fantastic port of R-Type and R-Type 2, which were on the Game Boy, and they're on the Game Boy, and then they were sorry. Yeah. Bidos was trying to stop me from talking about it. Anywho, R-Type DX is R-Type 1 and R-Type 2 from the Game Boy. R-Type 1 and R-Type 2 from the Game Boy with color adaptations on them. A new mode called R-Type DX that combines R-Type 1 and R-Type 2 from the Game Boy in color. And then a weird Sosa type game that is just a weird experimental thing that's included. It's fantastic, but no, I have no idea who owns Irem Properties now. For all I know, it could be Konami. And Konami, you'll discover, is kind of terrible about getting games onto Game Boy Color Virtual Console in the United States. In Japan, they're not so bad. I think this one is actually on Virtual Console in Japan. I would have to check. Our next Game Boy Color over here is Warlocked. Warlocked is a Warcraft-style RTS game, real-time strategy game, where you play as the orcs, you play as the elves, and it's fantastic. It has some voice. What's weird about this one is this is a Nintendo-published game. I think it was made by Bits Studios, and they did a really good job on this. This game deserves to be re-released onto Virtual Console for the Game Boy Color. Come on, Nintendo. This is one of your properties. You should put it out, because it's great. A lot of people would really appreciate discovering this hidden gem. Oh, speaking of hidden gems that will never be on the Game Boy Color Virtual Console, I did want to mention honorable mentions Magi Nation, fantastic Game Boy Color game, and Kirby's Tilt and Tumble, which obviously it's a motion game with some interesting stuff, but it's not part of our list because that's way too obvious. Anywho, let's see what's in this crazy fashionable Game Boy Color. The fourth one on our list is Shadowgate Classic. This game, put out by Kemco, is the classic adventure game from the NES, but with slightly enhanced graphics, fantastic music. I would settle for just the NES game if we got it. This is a fantastic, moody, great NES game ported to the Game Boy Color with new features, better translation, just overall a complete and awesome package. Another game similar to this would be Deja Vu 1 and 2, the case books of Ace Harding. This game, similar to Shadowgate Classics, is a hard-boiled detective story similar to what you would find from a Raymond Chandler novel. Gritty and dark, and weirdly enough, rated E, even though it talks about drug use and prostitution and people getting shot and there's blood and stuff. Gotta love that. Gotta love back when the ESRB did not care about rating mobile or handheld games properly. Thank goodness we fixed that, right? Yeah. Anywho, I'm going to put this under Shadowgate Classic because it's similar to it. Our next one up is one that, this is a fantastic game, and it really should be on Virtual Console. I think Square Enix might have the rights to it now, and that would be Tomb Raider for the Game Boy Color. Tomb Raider also had a sequel called Tomb Raider and the Curse of the Sword, And both of these would be very, very welcome on Virtual Console. They're Prince of Persia style side-scrolling games with fantastic difficulty and great graphics and good puzzles. Just a good game overall. Since those two are fairly similar, we're going to put that one under there. Now let's move on to our Kiwi Green Game Boy Color. And number 6 on our list. Street Fighter Alpha. Street Fighter Alpha, Warrior's Dreams, was put together by Crawfish and a couple other people, and it is a fantastic port of Alpha. All the combos are there, although a little simplified. It is a single player only game, sadly, but it makes up for that by being fantastic. It's really well done. The animation is smooth. The game allows you to do a lot of your old combos and such, and it's a good time waster. I can see why Capcom wouldn't release it, but I also don't see why Capcom doesn't release it. I mean, let's be honest. Yeah, it's single player only, but it's still a good Street Fighter game. Now on to this clear one. What could this be? Well, Revelations the Demon Slayer. Revelations the Demon Slayer from Atlas is a Game Boy Color port of the Game Boy Color game Last Bible, otherwise known as, well, actually let's get down to business on this. Revelations the Demon Slayer is related kind of loosely to Shin Megami Tensei and the Shin Megami Tensei series, like Persona. We've gotten so many of these, like Devil Survivor 1 and 2, Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey, the Persona games. We're getting that Persona and Fire Emblem game here. Shin Megami Tensei 4 Final, things like that. This game is on Virtual Console in Japan, so I'm not sure why it's not on Virtual Console yet in the United States. Atlas, we love you. Get on that, okay? Now, we're coming down to our final 3, and the first of our final 3 is Dragon Warrior 1 and 2. Dragon Warrior 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Color. These are enhanced versions of Dragon Quest 1 and 2 from the NES, and they are fantastic. This particular series is coming back to the United States in a big way with Dragon Quest 7 and Dragon Quest 8 this year. It's really a shame that they don't re-release Dragon Warrior 1 and 2 for the Game Boy Color, or even Dragon Warrior for the NES on 3DS Virtual Console in the United States. Square Enix has been kind of terrible about getting some of their stuff up there. I kind of blame them, possibly, for Tomb Raider not being up there. And Dragon Warrior also had Dragon Warrior 3 come out. If they released Dragon Warrior 1 and 2 Game Boy Color and Dragon Warrior 3 Game Boy Color on 3DS Virtual Console, you would be literally able to play Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on your 3DS by the end of this year. Just one right after another if you wanted to. And that would be fantastic. That would be very, very wonderful. I would pay up to $14.99 each for these on Virtual Console. I think they're worth it. Especially Dragon Warrior 3, or rather Dragon Quest 3. And I don't see why Square Enix doesn't do this. I mean, we do have like strange Dragon Quest wannabes up there, and those are not bad at all. Why not go with the original flavors? Since those are similar, we're going to put them down here under that. Now, let's see. What could this one be? Nope. It's Crystallis. Or Crystallis. From Nintendo Software Technologies. They ported over the NES game, improved the graphics a bit, wrecked the music, sadly, and changed around some bosses and improved the story a bit. Crystallis is a great Game Boy Color game. The other game that Nintendo Software Technologies put out at the same time, Bionic Commando Elite Forces, is already on Virtual Console on the 3DS. I don't see any reason why Crystallis shouldn't be up there, especially considering that this is a Nintendo-published game in the United States, developed by Nintendo of America. I don't know why they'd want to try and bury it, because it's worth it. And if we can't get Crystallis, this version, maybe we could get the NES version. Why don't we have a lot of the older NES ones? Where is Star Tropics 1 and 2 on Virtual Console? The NES ones, but that's another thing for another day. Now let's move on to our final game that should be on the Virtual Console but isn't, and that would be one of my favorite games on the Game Boy Color, Survival Kids. Now, Survival Kids had three games actually for the Nintendo DS called Lost in Blue. The problem with Lost in Blue is that they really messed up with Lost in Blue and Lost in Blue 2. Lost in Blue had like differences between the genders of the characters where they couldn't do the same things, which was a terrible choice. Survival Kids is much more pure. This particular game, you choose whether to be a boy or a girl, and then you end up stranded on a desert island with just, well, nothing at first, and you find your knapsack, which has your knife and a couple other things. It's kind of like a video game version of Hatchet, like Gary Paulson's Hatchet. I think that's the name of that author. And it is fantastic. It has multiple endings, hidden mini games. You can combine items. For example, if you combine dry twigs with tinder, you can create something to help you light fires. Your character has 3 different types of things that they have to worry about. They're food, strength, and water. You can get poisoned, you can combine all sorts of things. There's some crazy stuff you can do, especially once you've completed it. You can keep going through it, because once you've beaten it and gotten all the endings, there's more stuff that's unlocked. Like, for example, the bear cap, or you can actually create like beef jerky or power foods, which give you special effects or make you hit things harder. Some weird stuff you can do with this. One thing I found out about, though, is that Survival Kids is really glitchy. For example, there is an ending if you stay 100 days on the island. However, if you don't go to sleep on that 100th day, to cross over to that 100th day and instead just rest, you can keep driving the day meter up. In fact, you can get it to 999. There's a million ways to crash this game after you've gotten past that 100 mark. And it's a good game. Just, there's a ton of awesome glitches in it. You'd be amazed, like, the stuff you can find, like the wolf cap or the deer cap. There are certain types of berries you can combine with the grass. Oh, stuff like berries and grass, their effects are randomized as you play through. So a type of grass that heals you one time may poison you in another playthrough. It is a fantastic game, and there was actually a sequel for it called Survival Kids 2, which came out in Japan and allowed you to switch between 2 young boys. The first one had a boy and a girl, and the second one had 2 boys who were kidnapped and then had to find their way off this island. Again, there's multiple stuff for it, and sadly, this was never released in the United States. There is, however, a translation patch for it, where you have to go through, quote, extra market means to do that. Still fantastic, though. But yes, we didn't go after any of the obvious ones. But let's talk about, well, these are the 10 games I feel, personally, should be on the Game Boy Color Virtual Console on the 3DS and aren't, and it is a darn shame. And those are Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle 3, as well as 1 and 2, the old Game Boy games, R-Type DX, Warlocked, Shadowgate Classic, and by proxy, Deja Vu 1 and 2, The Case Files of Ace Harding, Tomb Raider, starring Lara Croft, and by proxy, Lara Croft Tomb Raider Curse of the Sword, Street Fighter Alpha Warrior's Dreams, Revelations the Demon Slayer, Dragon Warrior 1 and 2, and by proxy, Dragon Warrior 3, Crystallis, and then Survival Kids, and by proxy, Survival Kids 2. Now, these are games that we should be pestering them about bringing out to Virtual Console. We need to tell these companies that these are the games we want on 3DS Virtual Console. Of course, we should also keep fighting for games like Pokemon Pinball, which has no good excuse for not being on Virtual Console, and Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel, which is amazing and should be on Virtual Console. Had that not been so terribly played out, it would be right here where Crystallis would, and then all of these would be moved over a bit. But I really did want to tell you about Crazy Castle 3 and the Crazy Castle series, because those are great. But yeah, these are the top 10 games that I feel deserve to be on 3DS Virtual Console in the Game Boy Color category. We'll do this with Super Nintendo and original Game Boy very shortly. But yes, go ahead and hit like if you like this video. Comment below if you have any of these games, or if there are other games that you feel should be here. Also, I want you to share this video with Nintendo of America, with Square Enix, with Atlas, with Konami. Let them know that, with Capcom, let them know that let them know you will buy these games if they come out for the Game Boy Color Virtual Console on the 3DS. Because they are worthwhile games that should not be lost to the dust bin of history, to time and decay. They need to live on, if just in a digital format, in our hearts, minds, and pockets. I'm your host, Phil Bussey, the Mile High Mouth, and these are my 10 games that should be on Virtual Console for the 3DS that were made for the Game Boy Color. And until the next video comes out, you are now caught up.